Welcome to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. This is not your typical financial radio show. As a licensed CPA, insurance agent, and investment advisory representative, Chris coaches his clients on a holistic view of financial well-being with an objective of providing a complete financial strategy to fund life's goals. Chris is here to guide you down the path to the financial serenity you deserve. Now, here's Chris Cooper.
Good morning. Happy fall. October is around the corner. Leaves are going to start changing. It is my favorite time of the year. Both of our children were born in the month of October. My wife celebrates her birthday in October, and I am a November baby myself. So fall is a big time for our household here, and it is my favorite time of year. It is also estate planning month. So we are coming up on estate planning month. And guys, I've told you, I have conversations that are not always the most comfortable conversations to have. Talking about taxes and talking about, when we do pass away and talking about the ramifications of that and talking about, governmental share of our assets and all that good stuff. Not always the most fun thing to talk about, but I like to have fun talking about it because, gosh, somebody has to. And I enjoy it because I try to make it fun, because if we have these conversations in advance, we can have control of those conversations. We can limit the control others have on our decisions by taking control ourselves while we're healthy, while we're capable, while we have the mental capacity to make these decisions. It is so important. It gives us that peace of mind, that financial serenity, right? That's what we all want.
Serenity now.
Exactly. We want that. And that's so important in our life and what we do. So estate planning month, we're going to think and talk about more things relating to our legacy. Our financial goals outlive us. It's that simple. We know we have an expiration date. We know things might happen. We know there's some what ifs in life, but we need to make sure that our goals, our objectives that do outlive us are taken care of. Okay. I just told you I have two boys. They're 18 and 15. Celebrating birthdays in October. One of them's going to start driving. Freaks me out. My youngest one is starting to drive. That's scary. Watch out, folks, in St. Charles area. We have a new driver coming. So we have to think about what happens if something does happen to us, the what if. I don't like thinking about it myself, but you know what? I have to make sure that my kiddos are going to be taken care of. I have to make sure my wife is taken care of. Those are important conversations for me. I don't want her to have to worry about things, and I definitely don't want her to have to worry about meeting some other dude to fund her lifestyle. That's not fair. It's not fair. I really don't want her meeting some other dude, I'll be honest. That's just me. Maybe I'm selfish that way. I don't know. I think guys feel differently about that. But ultimately, we want to make sure our goals that do outlive us are funded and are taken care of, and we have the peace of mind waking up every single day, knowing that our families and our loved ones and our goals are taken care of. And that's what's so important when we talk about estate planning. It's about legacy. It's about leaving our control and our assets to those that we want to, not to the government funds, not to slush funds, not to the government through taxes, and quite frankly, not to the long-term care communities as well. Those folks work hard. They do great things. They help a lot of people. But if we can plan efficiently to fund those care needs, we're usually in a better position. All right. And that's really what estate planning is. And it's a very important time frame for me and what we do and how we talk, because there's not really a lot of investments that go into things that you can just kind of say, oh, we're taken care of. We've got it all self-funded. No, that's a hope. That's a prayer. And, those things are great, but I don't want to leave chances to hope about what's going to happen to me and my family. I want to make sure it's protected. And that's what estate planning is all about. So coming up, we got my special guest coming in, and we'll talk to him right after the break.
You're listening to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com.
Hey, it's Chris, and if you are worried about the risk of rising taxes, would like to keep your fair share, and reduce your partnership with the IRS, I'd like to send you a copy of my latest book, The New Holistic Retirement. You deserve a holistic and complete retirement plan. So why wait? Get on the path to financial serenity. All you have to do is request this book today.
Get your free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, at SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com. SerenityNowTax.com.
Hi, it's Vic Porcelli. You're listening to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper on 101.9 and 94.1 NewsTalk STL.
All right, so in studio with me today, my good friend with Vitale Law Firm, Kevin Vitale. Kevin, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Chris. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, so I cannot talk about trusts and legacy and estate planning without bringing in the person I like to sit across the table with clients with, and that's Kevin here. How are you, bud? What's going on in the estate world today? Are you excited for estate planning month?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. October, yep, always an exciting time.
Yeah, well, anytime you talk about things like, we do pass away. I think you run into this, right?
Everyone does.
Yes. Everyone does, yeah. And sometimes we have to talk about what happens if we get sick and we need assistance and, special care and all that kind of stuff. And we don't like having these conversations. It's not always comfortable. It's not human nature.
No, you're correct. Incapacity planning is it's a difficult topic to discuss.
Yeah, but it's important. Correct. And otherwise, I tell people this all the time. We're going to leave our money to one of three groups. We're going to leave it to our kids or a charity of choice, a care community for our own health, or, the government through higher taxes because we didn't plan for these kinds of things, right? So when we think about estate planning month and the importance of it from a legal perspective, talk to me a little bit about, I get this all the time. Chris, do I need a will? Do I need a trust? What's the difference?
Excellent question. Yeah. Most of the calls that we get in our office, people are asking for us to draft a will for them. Mm-hmm. And there is a misconception that a will is all you need and that a will avoid probate.
A will avoid probate.
Yes.
It does not avoid probate?
It does not. That is definitely a misconception. A will simply directs the probate process, but 100% of wills must go through probate.
So 100% of wills go through probate, which is a process you just said we want to avoid. So I'm going to hit on that in a minute. One of the things you can do to avoid it is the trust. So that to me is a big key differentiator, right?
It is. Trust is a private contract between you and your beneficiaries that is free of probate.
And I'm a big word, that contract is a big deal. People don't understand the value in contracts, and I can talk a lot more about that too. But let's talk a little bit about the probate process. So probate is something I think we all know we need to avoid, but we don't always know exactly what it entails. There's a cost associated with it. So what does the typical probate costs look like?
Yeah. So there's several costs. There's a financial cost. Mm-hmm. There's a time cost, and there's an emotional cost.
Sure.
So financial cost is probably the easiest one to lay out. There's a statutory fee in Missouri for both the attorney that assists the probate process as well as the executor of that will.
Okay.
A minimal statutory probate cost. So that means those may be higher than that. But it's a baseline cost, and it's expensive, bottom line. If you're looking at a approximately $500,000 estate, which is incredibly easy to get to.
And that includes your home, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, that house is.
There you go. I mean, real estate prices where they are.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Between attorney fees and executor fees, if you're looking at a $500,000 estate, it's going to be approximately $30,000.
Okay.
To get through it.
And so obviously math is pretty cool. The cool thing about math is I assume if it's $1 million and $2 million, you can just multiply by 2, multiply by whatever.
That's a rough formula.
And get there. You probably get a little bit of savings because some of that, but still way too much money.
It is. Yep. So simply, a $1 million estate, which again is not that difficult to get to, including the house in there, is about $55,000
in the probate process.
You're correct.
And I know the answer to this. Obviously, we do a lot of avoiding probate in what you and I do together. But tell our listeners a little bit about the timeframes of a typical probate process.
Yes. So it depends on the county you're in, but we'll use St. Charles County for example. They are fairly efficient in the process. A perfect probate with no issues, no hiccups at all is going to take 6 months.
6 months. Perfect conditions.
Perfect conditions, no issues at all.
Okay.
If there are any issues, if any processes are slowed at all, you're looking at a year.
Okay.
And it's not unheard of to have multiple year probate processes if there's any contention or any argument. Well,
and so the will that somebody receives would go to the probate court. They would kind of use that as some guidance, if you will.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily contractually guaranteed that that's what they will follow.
It is not. That is what probate does. It kind of closes the will and makes it legal and official.
Okay. So when we think about that, so the 6 to 12 month process, which is also just another emotional burden to manage too.
Yes.
Obviously that increases the cost and everything as well. A trust completely avoids this.
It does. It does. It's a little more work on the front end, but again, there's a massive financial savings, an emotional savings, and definitely a time saving.
Well, I think when you do the work in advance, just like on what I do on the financial side, you do the work in advance, but it makes sure that the objectives you have are actually achieved.
100%. And the biggest part of it is it's just that you're doing the work and you're the one making the decisions, as opposed to the probate process making the decisions for you.
Yeah. So when you think about, trusts and really I look at some of the things that I know about trusts, it becomes even that much more important when you have things like blended families and things like that, right? Let's talk a little bit more about the specifics as to why that's kind of important.
Yeah, absolutely. Blended families. Things can get incredibly messy unless you have a plan in place. Statistically, the husband will pass prior to the wife.
We make dumb decisions, Kevin.
You're not wrong. I've been guilty there myself many times. So, yes, but oftentimes, blended family, husband passes first, the wife is the survivor, unless there is a trust in place that says that surviving spouse cannot change the distribution plan.
Yeah,
there's a likelihood, even though people say it's never going to happen, that surviving spouse is going to make changes to the plan, and their former stepchildren will be left out of that plan.
Sure. And it doesn't even have to be intentional. It can be sometimes inadvertent as well.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's just, there's a lot of other things with trust. You can get much more specific. And that's what I always talk about, Kevin, with people that understand, that want to know the reasons why. You can go so much more specific on the distribution. And I know you've done some really neat things with your trust for your children who are younger, right? We wouldn't want your children are much younger. I got an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. And I can tell you my 15-year-old loses his earbuds every freaking week.
Oh, yeah.
He's not inheriting a dime from me right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he can get some benefit. Right?
Absolutely.
We want that to continue. So what have you done with your trust that I think is really cool?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Missouri, you have to be at least 18 to receive an inheritance. But just because you can legally receive an inheritance at 18 doesn't necessarily make it a good idea.
Right.
I was not a very wise person when I was 18. So
very few of us were.
Exactly. So my assumption is, despite as hard as we try, my kids probably are not going to be fully responsible formed adults at 18 either.
Yeah.
So we came up with a plan for our kids. It's relatively simple but effective. Our children are not receiving an outright distribution should we pass before they're 18. So between 18 and 25, the trust is going to pay for necessities. Healthcare, education to include vocational schools, college, what have you.
Right.
And then more broad is maintenance and support.
Okay.
So that could be helping pay for a car payment, helping them pay rent and things like that. The key point here is, though, the trust is not making a direct distribution to our children. They're going to pay for those goods and services from the trust itself. So that money's not squandered. So
that they have time to mature and become a rational adult, which we all tend to do at some point in time.
Usually.
Hopefully, yeah. Right?
Beyond that, we're going to incentivize them to be productive members of society. So between 18 and 25, the trust will pay for those necessities. At age 25, we're going to incentivize them to be productive members of society.
Nice.
And have, jobs.
Yeah.
So we're going to match their annual income with trust distributions.
Very cool. And I think that's a really neat thing to hit on is you cannot do those kind of unique things in a will. You can't even do those on naming beneficiaries on accounts and things like that. So I get a lot of conversations about how I should have my beneficiaries labeled on our account structures, on our life insurance policies, which are all important vehicles to have. But now who gets named as those contingent, those primary beneficiaries? And a lot of times I will tell people it probably is your trust, because your trust can be very specific in how you decide your distribution plan works.
It can. And the plan that I just described it's relatively simple, but also effective.
Very effective.
Yep. And then finally, once our child reaches 35, any remaining balance of that trust will be distributed to them outright.
Yeah.
And there's another safety net baked in there that gives our successor trustee, who's the person who manages that trust, the discretion to withhold distributions should that beneficiary have any social problems, better way to put it. So if there's a drug problem, alcohol problem, gambling problem, or they're going through a divorce, the trustee has discretion to delay that distribution until that problem is cured and improved. And at that point, they can make the distribution.
So the legal contract, which is the trust, gives you the ability to make sure your goals and objectives for your children stay even if you're not around, which I think is what's so unique here is you have the ability with the trust. Yes, it's kind of legal discussion. Yes, there's some financial ramifications there, but it encourages a little bit of that parental guidance to still exist even though you're not here.
No, that's absolutely it. You're protecting that beneficiary, that child, from themselves and making sure that the money that you worked your entire life for is not squandered and that generation can continue to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. So one of the other questions, and people get this misconception all the time, and it's, well, I need a trust to save on taxes. Talk a little bit about that. I obviously know the answer to that.
Sure. Now, a trust can do many things, but the normal trust that most people use, or revocable living trust, does not have any true tax benefit to it as far as tax savings. There's a step-up basis and cost that you enjoy, but beyond that, there are still many, many tax concerns, which I'm not an expert on, which is why Chris can assist.
Well, and we talk a lot with those kind of things, and I think that's what's so important. You got to have a legal and a financial strategy, right? And as you know, I mean, it's fun. We get to preach to the choir and this kind of thing, right? But so trust does not necessarily protect from a taxation perspective. Now, it can be a valuable tool to save for taxes, but it's based on the exemption levels, which are pretty darn high right now.
Yeah, most people are not going to be impacted by the exemption piece. So there is an absolute necessity to have a financial advisor get in there and dig into the numbers.
Yeah, and it's most of estate tax is not the death tax. Most of it's income tax. The estate tax piece can be a big deal, and that's where irrevocable trusts come into play. But now, Kevin, they're not my favorite trusts. Right? I don't have an irrevocable trust. There's a time and a place for it. And I think there's a big difference there.
Yeah. So that is the other flavor of trust. The one we had previously spoken about is the revocable living trust. Primary purpose of that is probate avoidance. The other kind is the irrevocable trust, also known as an asset protection trust or a Medicaid trust. Two major categories of people that makes sense for. One is the ultra high net worth individual. Currently, as long as your estate or assets are less than $13.6 million, not going to impact most people, and that doesn't make sense. There is an expectation on January 1st, 2026 that 13.6 will be cut in half, which it'll impact more people. But again, vast majority of the population not impacted by that.
And my opinion is it probably will get cut in half. I don't care what happens in November. I think that one's probably going to be on the chopping block as a negotiation ploy to get what the other sides want.
Yeah, I would agree. So again, it's going to impact more people, but not most of the population. The other segment of the population are those who have concerns about long-term health care.
Sure.
The best solution for them is some type of long-term health insurance policy in place.
Yeah, so planning for long-term care. Absolutely.
100%. If you can plan for that and make that happen, that is, in my opinion, the way to go.
While you're healthy, right?
Yep, absolutely.
You have more options.
But the alternative for that is it's a Medicaid asset protection trust. This is setting a irrevocable trust up. You as the grantor no longer have control or really access to the things you put in that trust.
Sure.
They come out of your name so that on paper you are indigent so that you're eligible for government benefits such as Medicaid.
Yep.
And as long as that asset, the trust is created, the asset sits in there for 5 years and bakes, then it is protected from Medicaid clawback. So
gotcha. Yeah. And that's, I think most people, when they think of a trust, they don't know that the differences between the irrevocable and the revocable. And I think most people want control of our assets. And whenever you irrevocably, relinquish control, there's some pros and cons of that. And if we can avoid that, it probably makes sense to go in that revocable side of things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, there's a time and place for it, but the better options are, again, that long-term health insurance. The alternative for that is just paying for it out of pocket, which can be
not usually as efficient as well. So very important. And Kevin, you and I love what we do. We get to talk about things like death and taxes and estate planning and incapacitation all day long. Somebody's got to love it, right?
Oh yeah, someone has to do it. So.
We have a good time doing it. So Kevin, thanks for coming in today. I'm looking forward with Estate Planning Month. We are going to do a joint workshop in October, and I've got a lot more details on that you'll hear about as we progress through the month. And I'm looking forward to another one of these workshop series with you, my man.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I appreciate the invite.
All right.
You're listening to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com.
All right, thanks to my man Kevin Vitale with Vitale Law for coming in. Kevin's office is in Wentzville. He's got a great facility out there, and I get a chance to spend a lot of time with him and his team. Every month, we get to hang out, talk a lot, and talk about strategies, talk about how we're helping people right here in this community, and it is so cool to work with an attorney that I know I can trust. He's done my personal estate plan as well, and I know that the friends over at Vitale Law take good care of me and the clients that I refer over their way. We help a lot of people, and the cool thing is we can actually sit in front of people side by side and make sure that not only is the financial side of the house taken care of, taxation taken care of, we also make sure that that legal side of the house is in order for business owners, for special needs situations, for those people that want to make sure that their legacy is protected and that their families are provided for. And that's what the fine folks over at Vitale Law do each and every day. And we are excited, so excited later on this month to be doing a joint workshop together where Kevin and I spend a little bit of time talking about estate planning and the importance of a holistic strategy to meet the needs of your estate goals. You can reach out to Vitale Law at Vitale Law STL or give us a call over here at Serenity Wealth, and we can make sure you have a consultation with both of us, because quite frankly, having that financial side and that legal side taking care of your estate sure does make a lot of difference in your legacy plans.
This is Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper.
All right, estate planning strategies, incredibly important when we think about what we've got going on with our legacy goals. We have to understand how it works, and we need to think about a holistic plan. We talked to Kevin about what that looks like, what that means, what a trust does, what the difference between a will and a trust is, and those things we need to consider. It is important. I have a trust personally. Vitale Law drafted it, like I mentioned, and it is a big deal to me. It is one of those things that has to be done to make sure you got the peace of mind that you need and deserve in this world. It's scary out there. We want to make sure we make the decisions. We want to make sure we make the decisions when we have the ability to make those decisions, because I want decisions that I make, not decisions made for me. And that is what a trust allows you to do. And what a trust does not allow us to do typically is avoid taxes. It's a common misconception, and we talked a little bit about that with Kevin. We have to understand that trusts do not mitigate tax risk for the vast majority of Americans. It might change in 2026 when likely the estate tax exemption laws do shift. I think they're going to shift, but it's still multiple millions of dollars is going to be where that's going to be impacted. Multiple millions in estate valuation. We're going to have to figure it out. More people are going to be impacted. We might see some more advanced planning strategies that involve things where a portion of assets are located in irrevocable trusts and things like that. But ultimately, we still want control. We want control of our assets. And that's why when I talk about taxes, I talk about tax risk. I talk about getting rid of that partnership, that control the government has in some of our financial means. We want to make sure we have some more control. We want to have options. And that is the challenge with an irrevocable trust. We mitigate or we reduce our control. We don't have as many options. And that's so important to understand that pro and con, that variable, right? Sure, we might see some tax implications and some tax benefits potentially, but we lose control. And so that's not something most people want to give up. And if we don't have to, because we're below that estate tax exemption, we shouldn't. But we still need to reduce our taxation. We still need to reduce tax risk on a macro level. Lifetime exemption, lifetime taxation, not focusing on your reduction on today's return. It's a big difference. It's a big lens shift. Most people don't understand and think about it this way, but we have to retrain our brain to work like this. Okay? It's a big deal. Our legacy is important, and it might depend on it. We want to make sure we think about the tax risk we have and put our goals in place. Okay? On the legal side, we have to make sure our estate plan has the right documents in order so that we avoid probate costs, which drain our estate value. They also make it hard for our beneficiaries and our trustees to receive funds because a court has to approve and a court has to do different things, and it lengthens the process, and you have to pay costs associated with those things. We don't want to do that. We want to mitigate costs, and we want to reduce the time our beneficiaries spend because it's already a burden. It's already emotionally challenging. We want to make sure that people have the grieving time that they need and they don't focus on the burden of dealing with the financial side, because we've done our homework, we've done our due diligence, we've set our goals up in advance so that there's less family drama, there's less fighting, and not most importantly, because really the less drama and less fighting and mitigation of all those other risks are really important. But we also want to reduce the impact of costs. And that's where trust really provides value. That's really a big deal. I'm a big fan of trusts. Revocable trusts are a big deal for me. We got special needs trusts that are important as well. Those are a little bit different in how they're treated. But, when you have those situations, they're very important. And we need to make sure our loved ones are taken care of. And that's what those things exist for. So trust and estate planning is a big deal of what we do at Serenity Wealth. It's important, and everyone needs to think about it and make sure it's part of your, not just your legal strategy, but also your financial strategy. It's probably more important, and my attorney friends are going to hate me, including Kevin, for saying this. I think the financial side of it's actually more important from an estate planning perspective than the legal side. The legal side's documentation and understanding that process. The financial side is due diligence on a month-to-month and an annual basis to make sure our legacy goals are completed in the most tax-efficient manner possible. And that is an incredibly valuable peace of mind. And that's what we focus on. That's what it's all about. And that is what Serenity Wealth focuses on in Estate Planning Month. So stay tuned for more details on the estate planning workshop that we're hosting with Kevin in October on the 22nd and 24th out in Wentzville. Give our office a call, 636-333-9819. We can get you registered in advance and make sure you have a seat saved for that session.
This is Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors.
Hey, it's Vic. Are you worried about rising taxes? Well, you're not alone. With government spending outpacing revenue, many Americans fear a tax hike is on the horizon. But here's the good news. You have options. Chris Cooper of Serenity Wealth Management specializes in tax-efficient strategies for income planning, legacy, and growth. Chris knows your money will go to one of three places: the government, healthcare, or your family and charities. Shouldn't your loved ones come first? Don't let Uncle Sam be your biggest beneficiary. Take control of your financial future today. Visit SerenityNowTax.com for your free copy of Chris's book, The New Holistic Retirement. Serenity Wealth Management, because you deserve peace of mind in retirement. Request your free book today at SerenityNowTax.com. That's SerenityNowTax.com to get your free copy of The New Holistic Retirement. That's SerenityNowTax.com. Serenity Now with Chris Cooper.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors.